Good evening. Welcome to the Haywood County Board of Commissioners meeting for March 16th, 2015. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we feel fortunate to live in a county that offers such scenic beauty, especially at this time of year. Give us as commissioners the wisdom and knowledge to make the best decisions for our county's future. Help us to improve the quality of life for all our citizens. Give our country's leaders the ability to inspire hope for our future. Be with our armed forces, home and abroad. In your name we pray.
Thank you. Okay, the first order of business is a call to public hearing. It's not required by statute, but there has been discussion about the selection of a proposed site for a new animal shelter in Haywood County, potentially located at the Haywood County Fairgrounds. So we want to have a public hearing to discuss the potential of that site and any other technical or legal ramifications that may exist. So that would be on Monday, April 20th, 2015 at 5:30 p.m. In this room. Okay, next is, the order of business is a public hearing to consider the adoption of the tobacco use restrictions ordinance for buildings, vehicles, and grounds in Haywood County. I'll open that public hearing now and recognize Ira Dove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Yes, this is for an amendment to Chapter 99, Tobacco Use and Restrictions, calling for an ordinance to cite as Tobacco Use Restrictions Ordinance for Buildings, Vehicles, and Grounds. Would note a couple of things of note before we open up the public hearing. You do have in the packet and was posted on the website a statement in support of restricting tobacco use in county buildings and vehicles and on county grounds from the Health and Human Services Agency. The Health and Human Services Agency and Social Services and Public Health have had restrictions in place by votes of their prior boards since 2007. In addition, we do have a letter already smoking at the Haywood County Justice Center from Judge Lutz and the Honorable June Ray, which spells out it spells out a designated smoking area, but saying that otherwise banning on the grounds. So those are the two letters that I have that would have any comment since this issue has had going forward. Other than that, really, there's been no comment before tonight. That's one question that people typically have, and this has been out there for an unusually long period of time because the original called meeting was for at the February meeting. As we know, that got snowed out. We then put it forward. It was continued by statute to the first March meeting and then continued to tonight so that the public could have a chance to comment at an evening meeting. So this has actually been out there for over a month. And other than a couple of ad hoc comments in the halls by employees who smoke and said they wanted a designated area, nothing. No real comments other than these two you have.
Okay. All right. Before we call for the public's comment, have any board members received any public input regarding this proposed ordinance?
I have not.
Okay. Just for everyone's edification, by our internal board rules, we will not vote on this matter tonight. We will wait until the next board meeting to consider any input and any comments that anyone may make tonight before we render a decision. Okay, then, we'll open it up. Anyone who would care to comment regarding the ordinance in question? If you come up to the podium, identify yourself, please, and if you would limit comments to 3 minutes if possible.
Haywood County Commissioners, I'm Don Smart. I'm a farmer here in the county.
First, before I start, I'd like to commend the commissioners for the fine job you did cleaning up this historic courthouse. It looks great. You finally cut the trees down. You can see the U.S. flag. It's great. Looks good. You know, things has changed a lot in 40 years. Mr. Upton, I never did think that the ACC would reach as far as Indiana. That's 1,200 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. I guess Chapel Hill needed some more competition, don't you guess? And I never did think that a farmer from down in Vines Creek coming up here to pay his taxes could get put in jail or fined for chewing tobacco. Things have changed. North Carolina is one of 22 states where marijuana has been decriminalized in small amounts for medical use. I haven't seen the ordinance you commissioners have come up with and what's all in it, does hearsay. But it's kindly strange you put a snuff dipper in jail while a man can stand outside and smoke a joint of marijuana. According to Sheriff Duncan, in 2 more years it'll be legal in the state of North Carolina, and that's a long way, and marijuana is legal and tobacco's outlawed. I've been coming to these anti-tobacco meetings for over 25 years. It all started, I guess, when Slick Willie was president. The first time I come, they didn't want anybody in the buildings. They wanted designated areas inside the buildings. They had that. Well, they didn't like that to come back a year later, and they wanted people outside. So they let them go outside, and now then they want it completely off. And I guess what they'll want after you pass this ordinance is they don't want people smoking in their cars driving down a public highway. And then after that, they'll be wanting to come to my house and put a stop to it on private property. And I guess that's when the wheels will come off the wagon. I can go along with what I thought it all was settled. There's no smoking when the state passed its law that they wouldn't allow any smoking in public buildings. It looked like that was going great. Everybody that smoked seemed to be taken to the law with no problem. My problem's not with the smoking tobacco. My problem is I can't believe you're outlawing smokeless tobacco. I've never read of anywhere where anyone's had a health issue with secondhand smokeless tobacco. I hope you can come around that. What I'm really concerned about is I come on county property to pay my taxes. Other time I spend a lot of time at the fairgrounds. And I reckon we may still have a fairgrounds. Looks like you're going to turn it into an animal shelter according to the agenda here for next meeting. So I guess I'll have to come back to another meeting. But anyway, out the fairgrounds, we've been getting along just fine under the current tobacco ordinance. People don't smoke in the building. People at the auctions and tractor pulls and truck pulls, they use their smokeless tobacco, and I hope we can continue to. I think that people that smoke should have a designated area somewhere where they can smoke, and there won't be cigarette butts scattered everywhere. And I hope the smokeless tobacco people will be left alone. You know, smokeless tobacco comes in a round can. There's a lot of things in round cans anymore. Beef jerky is one of them. There's a lot of tobacco-free snuff out there. You're going to ban it too? How are you going to distinguish it? And out the fairground, you know, the multi-purpose arena out there is paid for by Golden Leaf Fund. That's tobacco money. Tobacco money's meant a lot to Haywood County over the years and still does. I thought we might have a little respect for what it's did to the economy of this county and not completely outlaw tobacco on county property. I think we can accommodate everybody and not hurt anybody. And I wonder how it's going to be enforced. You know, we got a lot of problems in the county. We need money, and we got a good project going on out in Francis Cove, that landfill, $10 million project, and I don't sure all the taxpayers, when they find out their garbage tax is going to go up here next year, not going to be too happy, so we're going to hire smoke police to run down the snuff dippers. I'd like to see my tax dollars go in the sheriff's department thing, run down the thieves out in the country that's stealing stuff, and not spend their time trying to take or arrest tobacco users. We don't need a scene like you had in New York City a while back. All it is, we're getting a lot of things we call government overreach. I think the governments are reaching a little too far, but it's necessary. I'd like to say one thing. This year will be the 150th anniversary of the war between the states. The last shot was fired in Waynesville. And 153 years ago, the great General Stonewall Jackson told his men before the Battle of Chancellorsville, he said, "Gentlemen, if we lose this battle and we lose this war, we not only lost our freedom, but we've lost our country." And I don't think there's been an American that's spoken more of the truth than that gentleman spoke that day. I can see it coming. Is Haywood County going to follow Buncombe County and going to have to put our horses in three-sided shelters? Circus can't come to town? I hope not. So I'm going to close with that. I hope you folks can come together, you're good men, and come up with something reasonable we can all live with. Like I say, I spend a lot of time at the fairgrounds, donate my equipment. I sponsor the tractor pull, truck pull, and we like to use a little tobacco out there. And most of the anti-tobacco people I've ever met, most of them blue collar or blue bud people, and they don't attend truck pulls and tractor pulls. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who would care to comment? Okay. Any board members have any comment or questions before we close the public hearing?
I just wanted to comment, we're not, at the fairgrounds is not included in this ordinance. It's been left out. So I want the public to know that.
Okay.
We are still considering a designated area.
I think that's on the table for, we can discuss that. Probably now would be the time to discuss that. There have been, I think Judge Lett commented in his letter that perhaps we should consider a designated smoking area. I've not had anyone else tell me that. So we can talk about it.
If when someone comes to the parking deck, they can smoke in their car. This doesn't outlaw that.
No.
So if or an employee with the county, if they had their vehicle, it seems to me that would be a space where they could go smoke and it wouldn't violate. It would be contained within the car, I guess, until they got out.
You know, one issue I see with having a designated smoking area for people who are frequenting the Justice Center is that you could very well be putting people on two different sides of a criminal issue or a domestic or civil issue at the same location after having left court, and that could be a volatile time. I know Kirk's got more experience in that than I do, but it may not be the wisest course of action. What do you think, Kirk?
I don't know. This issue's been something that it's not like it's the first time that we've discussed it. Matter of fact, I think we've discussed it for at least 12 years. I know that it's come up, and generally, I hadn't necessarily been an opponent of establishing it, but I've recognized the fact that some of the things Mr. Smart recognized about the free will of those who have the opportunity to smoke if they want to. It's the problem with it is it has become an infringement upon other people at some of the facilities, and it's quite prevalent when you're walking into the courthouse. It's I can't say it's every day, but it's at least once or twice a week I walk right through smoke, and right at the front door, and so it's hard not to recognize that this is something that we need. That being said, then you have people that have a choice that want to smoke and that actually work there. And probably what's going to happen is if we don't designate a particular area for them to go smoke, they're going to find a place right across the street on the sidewalk. And I don't know if that's something that we should do to the town of Waynesville either by pushing those folks off. So
the orders that are in place for those individuals in court, generally they are orders with domestic violence. So they have to stay away from each other. So I would say the first person there gets a smoke, and I guess the other one has to go get in the car. But I don't mind establishing a place if that has been requested by some of the same people that are requesting that this be put in place. And that's, you've got, most of these folks are employees that are requesting this put prohibition on smoking, and they also want a place to smoke. There's just, there's much more people that want the prohibition now than want it to be allowed. So I'm okay with establishing that as long as the place has some indication of the signs of where it's located, plus a proper way to dispose of the remnants. Because that's the other thing that we've run into with allowing smoking. It's not just the fact that there's smoke in the area, it's all the litter that occurs. Because despite what folks think of the remaining part of the cigarette, that's litter when it's on the ground, and you can tell where everybody's been smoking because it's all over the place. So those are just kind of my thoughts on it. And the smokeless issue, I don't know how you could prohibit that. I was glad to hear about the fairground situation, because I certainly would not want to prohibit smokeless tobacco at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, you have other offensive things out there.
It'd be like when I was playing baseball, trying to prohibit those guys from chewing and dipping, and that's just not going to happen.
I spent 22 years at Pisgah working with this problem, smoking. To start with, as an assistant principal, we had a smoking area. And then our school board moved no smoking on campus. Now, that sounds good, but my job changed. And I guess where my students would smoke in the restrooms. So we had to put smoke detectors and had teachers watching it, all that. So smokers are going to find a place to smoke. Will we move smokers inside if they don't have an area? And this is what happened to Pisgah, and I think it happened in Tuscola. So, we're going to have to be ready for that. If no smoking on any of the campus, smokers will go somewhere, where Kurt said, across the street or in the restroom.
Well, right now, I think people are fairly well conditioned to not smoke inside in any of these facilities. I've never seen anyone light up in this courthouse or in the Justice Center. And we wouldn't want to do anything that would make them start doing that. So, Kevin, what do you think on a designated smoking area?
I think they can smoke in their cars. That's what I'm allergic to smoke. When I walk through smoke, my sinuses become inflamed, and usually I'll start sneezing 3 or 4 times. And plus, I'm asthmatic, so I guess I'm not real sympathetic to smoke. On the smokeless tobacco, I understand Don's point about that. I don't know that that's been a problem. Has it? Does anybody know that that's been a problem?
I see evidence of it in front of the elevator when people take it out and throw it on the ground.
If you're just talking about the little cans as he was talking about, you don't see much evidence of that. It's the ones that
you were on the
chew
school board.
scrap. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was on the school board when we did the 100% tobacco-free schools, and there was a lot of issues, but the thing is it's the intent to be 100% tobacco-free, and majority of the people realized that. They did what they needed to do. I think you still see at football games and stuff like that, probably smokeless tobacco being used. It's just they're very discreet with it. They're very conscious of, people around them. So they really make an effort to try to adhere to the rule. As far as the designated area, I think we all know the issues right out front out here. Lots of people standing around out there. I think that's what's driven this thing. A lot of the litter, you can't, if you could get them dispersed, but they just don't dispose of it properly. They throw it on the grounds. And, if you did have a designated area, that would alleviate the people in front. It would keep them off the sidewalks because they're going to go somewhere and smoke. So, you know,
It's just going to move the mess from the
gonna move.
front to
It's
another
gonna move,
location.
yeah.
And it's going to be,
But I'm more inclined to attempt the designated area. I mean, you know, so.
well, we're not of one mind apparently, so we'll just think about it. And next meeting, we'll make a decision. So, any other comments?
We don't want to create an unwanted situation like whatever move we make.
Exactly.
Make
Unintended
another problem
consequences. Yeah.
To solve.
Well, and if I'm following correctly, is the town of Waynesville, are they not looking at a
They
tobacco-free?
are. I see
So-
that the mayor is with us tonight. Would you care to come up and explain where you're at, Gavin?
Because
and
if
what-
if we designated an area and then you all come up with some policy yourself, I'm not sure how that would affect it.
First of all, I appreciate you even taking up the issue. I've commented that several of you are on the school board. I brought up this issue 20-some years ago in front of our school board and couldn't get a second to even discuss it. So I appreciate Mr. Smart's comments, but it's an issue that we ought to be taking up. We are looking at having our public hearing on, Marcy, when is it? March 24th. Our ordinance is a little stronger than yours, but basically it says that in the commercial areas, including downtown, there'll be no smoking in front of a commercial, within 50 feet of an entrance to a commercial establishment. The practical effect is that it basically outlaws smoking and or smokeless tobacco in our commercial areas. And that's sort of what we're looking at. If you create a designated area, you'd have it on your own grounds, I assume, because our ordinance, if we pass it, would prohibit any area that's under our auspices and control. But that assumes that we pass it. I'm not sure where our board's going to go with it. Our ordinance does track yours. It's a little stronger than your ordinance. We don't provide for any areas for our employees to have a designated area. We haven't looked at that. And I don't think we probably will. I don't want to speak for the board, but that's not where we're probably going with it. We deal with the public just as you do. And the enforcement issue, once again, we have designated, the town manager will be able to designate people to enforce the issue. I foresee that in our circumstances, it will be the shop owners and the business owners that really enforce this. And then at the same time, our enforcement officers will be able to do it. But it will be a self-policing effort on a large part. And then if the problem isn't ameliorated by that, we can step it up. Sheriff Christopher is here tonight. You don't stop everybody speeding down the highway. You try to make sure that everybody understands that speeding is an offense. But at the same time, we're not going to stop everybody smoking every day or using smokeless tobacco every day. That's just not possible. I'd be glad to answer any questions from the board.
I read in the paper where you had commented, or maybe it was Marcy, that your proposed ordinance was taken pretty much from what Canton had done.
That's correct. It almost tracks it verbatim.
Okay. Did you talk to anybody over in Canton? What have been the ramifications of their ordinance? Has there been any problems?
I am not aware of any. We were down there I was down there last week and on another matter that I'm here tonight for, and I actually applauded them for having been the first to pass the ordinance. And I didn't get any feedback from them, so I assume that there's been no problem since then, or there's no issues that I'm aware of. So each community, and of course you being the leader in the community, this board will have to decide how it's going to play out a little bit. So we were sort of waiting for you to take this step that you're doing tonight and see where you go with it. Because if you don't pass the ordinance, we'll do something. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest with you. Other questions?
If you pass
or some form of the ordinance.
If you pass one and we don't, there'd be a lot of guests here.
I appreciate that. Any other questions from the board?
Not for me. Anybody else have anything for Gavin?
Thank you very much,
Thank
gentlemen.
you, Gavin. Mr. Mayor. Ira, would you care to touch base with your counterpart over in Canton? Let's just see if they've had any unintended consequences from not having a smoking area.
Be glad to.
Well, if you in fact did something like the town of Waynesville and say 50 feet from any entrance, I mean, that's, of course, I guess it still could push them back to the parking deck or whatever, but that's going to cover a whole lot of what we're talking about up here.
Yeah, it doesn't, well, it doesn't.
There's already state ordinance.
Pardon?
You need already state ordinance that you got to be 50 or
Yeah, I
100
think it's
feet.
either 50 or 100 feet from the entrance to a courthouse now.
And I would think the entrance to the elevators would be the same.
Yeah,
Be the same.
yeah.
And,
Okay.
you know, in enforcement, when we were looking at this, we had some other districts come in and speak to us about the problems with enforcement and all. And one of the things that, you know, everybody's concerned, and I'm sure as Mr. Smart mentioned about the sheriff's department or the law enforcement having to run around and police it, you know, but I don't think that was a huge issue because, you know, you might have somebody that's going to defy everything and stand out in front of everybody and, you know, try to smoke or whatever in one of these ordinances. But, you know, that person's going to have to be addressed. But you're not looking for that person that's having the nicotine fit that's running around the side behind the courthouse or behind the corner trying to get a couple of draws off a cigarette. You're not looking for that person. So anyway, it kind of took care of itself with the school system. We didn't really ever have a huge issue. There was a lot of stuff brought up. It didn't come to pass. And, you know, I think you could probably look back at that policy. And is it 100% tobacco-free? Probably not, but the intent is there, and it works pretty well.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing at this point. As I said, we will make it an agenda item for action of some sort at our next board meeting. Okay, we'll move to the public comment session. We have two people who have requested to speak. Gene Larson, if you come up to the, okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tell me if you can't hear me. This is sort of an odd system. Bring it
Yeah,
closer.
just speak right into the.
Okay. I've been told I have a loud voice and that I should be the one to speak. My name is Jean Larson, and I live at 111 Serenity Drive off of Hemp Hill in Brookside Estates. And I've brought some of my neighbors with me because we have been fighting the internet problem, and we really could use your help. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've done so far. For one thing, it never occurred to me that people would move into this community and not be guaranteed internet. It was just something I assumed we could all get. And that doesn't seem to be the case. We've had 4 recent new owners in our community. They're all year-round residents, and every one of them has been told by AT&T that they can't be guaranteed internet. They're going to have to go on a waiting list, that there are only 50 slots, and you know, if someone has to die or move before anybody moves up in the slots. I was lucky when I got here. I got 6 megabyte per second, and then I had to reboot my router all the time, and so they said, I called them up and they said, oh, well, we're going to have to reduce your megabyte per second to 3. I'm the lucky one in our community. Most of the people who have it have 1.5 megabyte per second. And that's very difficult to do anything. We have done a lot of research over the last couple of weeks. Commissioner Searles has been very kind to indicate his interest in that particular issue, and we really appreciate that. We met with Carolina Mountain Cable, and basically their position was that we had to pay $22 a foot to bring cable off of Hemp Hill, and at a sort of a estimate of about a quarter mile, that would be over $30,000, which obviously is a lot of money for us. I also have a friend who had that down Hemp Hill a little bit, and she said it was slow and very expensive. We talked, several of our people have satellite internet, Exceed or Hughes net, and their speeds are not as good as they're supposed to be, and if you use any kind of streaming, they go down immediately after a couple of days. So it's like a slug. We even talked to a group called Skyrunner out of Asheville that does wireless. And unfortunately, because we live in a forested environment and because we have our houses spaced apart, apparently that doesn't work either. one of our new members got a Verizon hotspot. I've talked to Verizon at least 2 or 3 times, and there's very little that you can do with it, and it doesn't operate. It operates sort of like satellite TV. If you do any streaming whatsoever, which some of our members do, including me, then you use up all your bandwidth in the first couple of days and you're dead. I was really surprised that it was recommended to me that I speak to Mr. DeSimone, the mayor of Maggie Valley, and I spoke to him earlier this week. I was very surprised to learn that there is a North Carolina law that prevents municipalities and other governmental entities from offering this service because it would compete with commercial providers. But we're in a situation where no commercial provider will provide. So we're getting really desperate about that. Another issue that I think is really important, and it just occurred to us late in this discussion, is that we're in a real estate market that's sort of struggling to sort of get a hold again. And just imagine, I assumed when I came here, I never gave it a second thought that I would have internet. It just seems like almost a God-given right, you know, in America these days. Although I read in the newspaper lately that we're number 27 in internet speed after Hungary and Bulgaria. Doesn't that make you ashamed, really? We're supposed to be good. And we're in the internet age. I mean, everything that we do is based on the internet. We have education on the internet. We buy things on the internet. We buy tickets. We buy travel, entertainment. You all know you can look up anything on the internet. You can learn how to repair your car on the internet. You can do anything. But if you don't have internet, then you're really limited. So we're hoping that you will help find a solution to this for us. We're just desperate for our new people to be able to have internet and to function like normal Americans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can comment a little bit. First of all, I recognize the problem. I agree with everything you've said. There is a broadband study group in Haywood County that is looking at various options. Mayor DeSimone is in that group, as well as myself, Commissioner Sorrells, Ira Dove, and our technical representatives, looking at various potential solutions, including wireless and some other solutions. But the bottom line, as you pointed out, is a lack of providers. And until we can convince the providers that they need to, in fact, provide, it's going to be difficult. Now, there is a law in North Carolina that prohibits municipalities and counties from becoming commercially involved in this. However, the FCC ruled, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, and specifically mentioned North Carolina and another state, prohibiting the state from imposing laws that prohibited municipalities and counties from becoming involved in this. Now, I don't know where that stands, Chip, exactly. I know there has been some talk of a Senate bill to eliminate that, but I also know that the President said he would veto any bill that interfered with that. So
I don't know. There's talk of it, but I will look into it when I get back to Raleigh tomorrow.
So would you look into that and see what,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
if we can have a placeholder or anything of that nature?
I definitely will.
Because we do own some fiber ourselves, and perhaps that would be part of a solution.
Would it behoove citizens to call their state representatives
Yeah,
about this?
I think Jim Davis is going to sponsor a bill, if I'm not mistaken. Did all of you folks fill out that survey? Okay. Okay, that's helpful. The more information we can get from surveyed would make it more likely that a provider would see a profit motive to become involved. And so we ran that through the schools and various organizations. It would be very helpful and if anyone has any questions about how to get a survey or whatever, just call the county manager's office and we can certainly arrange that.
Yeah, what we've tried to do is identify the particular areas that, where there's, lack of service and maybe several households and areas, spread out in a particular area, and which we've done that pretty well. I mean, we don't have everybody, but we've located or identified some particular areas, and it just happens to be, I think Hemphill is one of them. But we've also got a meeting Thursday with some of the providers, bringing them in and, making them aware of this information. And hopefully, that will help jumpstart some of these providers, being able to look and see a particular area and think, well, we could go in and potentially, it's all about making it pay for itself. I mean, that's what we've run into, and, without the municipalities or counties being able to get into it, it's a for-profit business. And in addressing the cable issue or the wired internet situation, when that subdivision was initially put in up there, the cable or internet provider tried to get the developer to put in underground, because you have underground power, if I'm not mistaken, and he tried to get them to put in the line then. They wouldn't do it. So, and then he's sitting out there with a huge expense to come in, and that's what you were talking about just a little while ago. So, but we are trying and working on this. We have been involved. I've been the commissioner now for over 4 years. Since I've been on, making broadband or internet availability more accessible has been on the on our EDC plans and everything. But I can say that we've probably made more progress in the last 6 months with this committee that we've had. Now, does that mean we're going to get you what you need anytime soon? I can't tell you that, but we are making progress. So,
Mark, also, I just want to let y'all on the loan. I remember we just got a request or a comment from a resident in Crusoe that had a similar problem. So it's common throughout the county. That's in the south end, and you folks are in the north end, so I can understand.
But the issue's not lost on us. We understand the importance of it, and we will continue to persevere. Okay, Sam Smith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thanks for the opportunity to make a few brief comments here relative to an item that's attached to the matter of the animal shelter and the proposed site. You will note that in your attachment number 10, there is a progress report regarding the architect and a request for approval of the architect. And in that material, there is mentioned several times a committee which has been functioning for some time, made up of county personnel and others from the community, I assume from the animal shelter group. To the best of my knowledge, I cannot identify anyone who is directly connected with either the Fairgrounds Board of Directors or the Voluntary Advisory Council on that committee. And I would just like to make a suggestion that the commissioners consider appointing someone who could represent those two categories. And if I may be so bold as to make a suggestion, one of the folks whom you know, I'm sure, who can represent both the Fairgrounds Board and the Advisory Council is Mrs. Nancy Davis. Mrs. Davis operates a business here in the county that caters to dog owners. She is also involved with all of the major dog shows that we have out there at the fairgrounds. And of course, at your discretion, just like to suggest that name as a possible addition to the committee representing those two groups, the Fairgrounds Board and the Advisory Council. Thank you.
Yeah, the term committee is probably not exactly accurate. We have met only a few times. It's ad hoc with the advisory committee that has been established. And the purpose of the meeting, which Kevin and I attended, was simply to provide the parameters for the selection of an architect. Site has only been discussed at one meeting, and very briefly at that. So that was not the purpose of that committee. It was to select an architect. Kevin and I did not participate in the architect selection. That was done by staff. I'll recognize Ira for further comment.
Yes, it was members of the staff meeting. There's already an established Animal Advisory Board committee, and it was members that they had, from their committee, met with staff. So there was not a separate committee from their Animal Advisory Board.
That's right. That's right. But thank you for your comments, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone else present who would care to comment? Okay, thank you. We'll move then to constituent concerns. Michael? Kevin? Kirk? Bill?
Those couple items are the things that the things that have been discussed this morning are the things that I've been contacted on.
Okay.
And I was looking at it, so
Okay. Okay, then, we'll move to administrative and agency reports. We have the Haywood County Tourism Development Authority report on mid-year occupancy tax numbers for Haywood County and some other TDA programs. Lynn Collins, the director, is with us.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hasn't this been the perfect tourism day in Haywood County? I wanted to come and give you a mid-year report on the occupancy tax collections for Haywood County. As you know, we collect a 4% occupancy tax on all short-term rentals in Haywood County, and that's of less than 90 days. And so that 4% is divided into 3%, which comes directly back to the Tourism Development Authority for the purpose of marketing the county overall as a destination, and then 1% goes back to the zip code communities where it's collected for the purpose of them utilizing that money for, as they see fit, for tourism-related projects. The first report you have in your packet is the 3% collections year to date, and this runs through the month of December, so that's for the first 6 months of the year. And as you can see, we're running 10% ahead of budget and 10% ahead of last year. So we're obviously thrilled about that as things are looking up. So we're pleased about that. The next graph that you have in your packet is the 1% collections year to date. And this is broken down by zip code, and it shows the projections along with the actual collections year to date. So through December, Canton is 20% above projections. Clyde is 7% below projections. Lake Junaluska is 19% below projections. Maggie Valley is 6% above projections, and the town of Waynesville is 2% above projections. So all in all, that is not bad. Even the ones who were under projections are not very far off. As you can see on those numbers, some of those aren't large amounts, so when it says 7%, that doesn't amount to a whole lot in the case of a zip code area like Clyde. The next report you have is an overall 4% report that we do each month to give to our board, and it shows the distribution, and it breaks out the penalties and the fee to the county that we pay to the finance office for the collection of this money. And it also talks about account performance. And you can see that December 2014 had 293 accounts versus December of 2013, which had 276. So we're 6% ahead in the number of accounts we have reporting right now. I will tell you that I just got the January numbers at the end of last week, and based on those numbers, we are still holding steady at that 10% ahead. So we're thrilled about that. The next slide you see an accommodation breakdown. We do this on a monthly basis also, and it's broken down by campgrounds, cabins, cottages, villas, vacation rentals, hotel motels, country clubs and resorts, and bed and breakfast inns and lodges. So the colored bars show you the breakdown of each of the accommodation types used that month. And that's interesting. You'll see in December that the vacation rentals and the hotel motels were almost neck and neck. And that fluctuates. A lot of it, especially in the month of December, is based solely on weather. A lot of families like to come in for the holidays and rent vacation rentals. However, if we have a big snow and they can't get to those vacation rentals, then normally you'll see all those folks end up in the hotels. I wanted to give you some examples of how some of the 1% was being used in some of the different municipalities. The list is very long, so I just picked out a few from each one. And you can see that some of it goes towards festivals and events, and some of it goes towards the Haywood County Fair. We have paid for things like executive restrooms and transportation for the Western North Carolina Conference at Lake Junaluska. We've paid for in Maggie Valley. Some of that money has gone towards the grading of the festival grounds to level that space out so they can accommodate more vendors easier. So it goes for all different kinds of things. Each of the zip code areas, as you know, has a 1% subcommittee that accepts the applications for that funding and reviews and recommends that funding to the TDA board. The TDA board does have final approval on those 1% funds. And the next slide is TDA news. We completed a new long-term strategic plan last year, and the two growth areas that were identified for tourism in Haywood County were the 2% occupancy tax addition, and the other growth initiative was a group sales initiative. We have always focused on leisure travelers, in other words, families that travel. We have not really focused on that group initiative, so we have worked on putting that initiative into place. We're currently going through the interview and process in hopes of having somebody on board within the next 60 days or so. But as part of that, we have gone ahead and we still from time to time get requests for people who are interested in bringing groups here. And one of the latest ones that we worked with, and the announcement just came out last week, was the Cycle NC Mountains to Coast ride. We worked with the town of Waynesville, and Waynesville is going to be the host for the start of that event the last weekend in September. So that's a good jump start for our group sales initiative, and we'll get a lot of good publicity off of that event, and we're thrilled to be hosting them. As you know, we use a portion of our funds to trim our 46 miles of the parkway that we have here in the county. They have had so many federal cutbacks, they're not able to keep up with all the trimming, and we have become a good example of that, and we have almost 75% of our 46 miles trimmed, so we put money towards that each year. They will be doing some additional trimming for us this spring and probably continue to do so in the fall of this year and then in the next new budget. We also found out recently that there was not a chapter of the Friends of the Parkway on the southern end of the parkway, so we are working with the Friends organization to establish a Friends of the Parkway chapter here. It ends in the southernmost chapter that is currently in place ends in Asheville, so we are working to do that. Dr. Steve Morris, our friend from Western Carolina University, had his class do a study for us, and it was on the tourism trends from 2008 through 2014. And his class presented those findings to us in December, and that was part of their final grade. And it was a great study, and they gave us lots of good information. And one thing that they predicted was that in this budget year, Haywood County would see a 12% increase in tourism. So we're real close, and hopefully we'll make that 12%. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them, but thank you for your time.
Any questions of Lynn? Very good presentation. I'm glad the numbers are up. Thank you.
Just like to make a comment, since I'm the commissioner representing or serving on the TDA board, that 4 years that I've been on it, there's been a lot happening. A lot of innovative things happening in that office, and you know, always looking to be better and to increase tourism in Haywood County. So just to report that I see that happening.
Okay.
I wanted to thank Lynn for all they do. It's interesting how tourism gets folks here. I talk to people, and I know Kirk does all the time. They come on vacation, and then they come back, and then they buy a house and maybe even retire here. And I do lots of surveys for people, and I know Kirk does lots of closing for people that have moved here because they started vacationing, because TDA was able to have their programs and get them here and they sell them on the area. The area sells itself, so I appreciate all that they've done for that. And it has a big ripple effect, at least for me, I know.
Okay. Thanks again, Lynn. All right, is there any adjustment to the agenda tonight? Okay, hearing none, we'll move then to the consent agenda. We've had the opportunity to review the March 2nd, 2015 regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes to those?
I just, at the end of the minutes, we had appointed Dr. Freeman and the name was wrong, and so we just need to change that to Dr. George Freeman
Okay.
at the end of the minutes that we had. So, and I've discussed it with Candy. So.
You've got that with Candy? Okay. All right. All right, so the approval of the consent agenda will include the correction to those minutes as articulated by Kevin. All right, next up is the February 2015 refunds, releases, amendments, and discoveries. David Francis.
Good evening, Commissioners. Hope everybody's doing well. The releases and refunds that you have before you, nothing unusual to report, standard operating. So if you have any questions, be glad to answer those.
Okay, any questions of David? All right, the third item then, thank you, David, is February 2015 tax collection update. I understand that our tax collector is ill tonight, so.
Yes, he had a family emergency out of town, so as deputy tax collector, I'm representing him today.
Okay, fine, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you can see in your attachment, as of February 28th of 2014, we are up by 500ths, and that's compared to last year, which is good considering the transition that we have had in our office. We are currently training new employees and working toward meeting the tax rate.
Any questions? As long as it's up.
Yeah, that's a good thing, right?
Okay.
No pressure, right?
Right, no pressure.
No pressure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
we'll move then, if there's no questions, to a series of budget amendments. Julie Davis, our Finance Director.
Good evening.
Evening.
I have a few budget amendments for you. The first one is a Health and Human Services budget amendment. It totals $28,670, and this is actually a combination of state, federal, and local monies coming into the county for the Energy Assistance Program.
Okay. All right.
And the next one is $1,000, also Health and Human Services. This is for child health. And
That's
this
a
is
grant
money.
proceed.
This is grant money, a local grant, Western North Carolina Health Network.
Okay. Any questions there? Okay, the final one?
And the final one is just a reallocation of where we are showing some expenses for reporting purposes. We have a professional services other. This is actually somebody in the tax office or somebody that's working for the tax office that is doing some work on foreclosures to bring in some tax collections. And what we've been doing in the past is netting these in a payable account where money comes in through the sales, and then we're paying the money out of that, so it nets. And we've decided we want to split those out so we can show the money coming in, the amount that we're paying out. And that's $52,800, but in addition to that, and also in the tax office, would like to show $95,000 estimated for the motor vehicle collection cost. These costs are coming from the state, and the revenue is coming from the State Department of Revenue. We receive a net amount, but the Department of Revenue would like for us to post the gross amount in revenue and the expense as an expense line item. So the total of these is $147,800. They're not really related, except they're both tax collection processes.
Any questions of Julie? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll move to the last item of the consent agenda. I recognize Ira Dove for a joint resolution of support for Senate Bill 141. Ira?
Yes, thank you. This is a request for support for joint resolution for Senate Bill 141, which is Waynesville annexation referendum, and for the extension of corporate limits of the town of Waynesville for June 30th. And that would be to include Lake Junaluska community as defined within the referendum or within the bill. Tonight here with us, we have Mayor Gavin Brown as well, and Jack Ewing, who is the director of the lake, if you would like them to speak on this as well.
Okay. Gavin? Welcome again. Welcome, Mr. Ewing.
Thank you, gentlemen. I never cease to amaze me how things change over the years. The economy of Haywood County in western North Carolina used to be tobacco, textiles, and timber, the 3 T's. Today it is trade, technology, and tourism. It does change over a period of time. I appreciate Mr. Smart's comments, but today we're here about another basic principle that hasn't changed, and that is the democratic principle of the folks getting the right to vote. We were here a year and a half ago asking you to endorse the actual annexation. That bill, of course, didn't occur. This time, at the urging of Senator Davis and Representative Queen, we've added a component that may have been self-evident to begin with. We didn't have it in the original bills, but we do now, and it's simply the proposition that the town of Waynesville, the citizens in the town of Waynesville, and the residents within the designated area of Lake Junaluska both would have the opportunity to vote at the municipal election on November the 3rd. A vote of those groups would require both groups passing the bill or passing the authorization. In other words, if the folks in Lake Junaluska turned it down but Waynesville voted for it, it wouldn't go through, and vice versa. In other words, both entities, both communities have to be in support of this. You've heard the long efforts that the 2 groups have made and the support that's been garnered from the community itself. But this, I think, will add that element that's always necessary with something as monumental as this is. When Waynesville merged with Haywood, there was a vote component in that bill, but it wasn't exercised. But at this point in time, we think it's appropriate to have that vote component in the bill itself. Mr. Ewing's here and can explain the history behind this, but my purpose in being here tonight is to ensure the commissioners that this is not necessarily and is not a vote for or against the annexation. It is for that democratic principle of allowing the citizens affected in a very monumental decision to vote on that proposition. And I find it hard to believe that anybody would oppose that concept. There may be reasons and arguments to the contrary, but I have a hard time understanding those, and I have a hard time sort of seeing why that would be objectionable. I would ask Jack to give you a little background about where we've been and where we plan on going, but I stand ready to ask any questions or answer any questions that you might have. And once again, thank you for considering this possibility.
Thank you, Mayor Brown and Commissioners. It's good to have the opportunity to talk with you again about this important issue. You know as well, or even better than I do, the history of Lake Junaluska and Haywood County. For over 100 years, Lake Junaluska has been providing an opportunity for people to gather, initially during the early years in the summertime, but now we've become a year-round facility in Haywood County. We had historically been viewed as a religious conference center, a place where Methodists primarily came to gather for summer events and to have summer homes. It became more and more a winterized place, and we expanded the services that we provide to be beyond United Methodism into other denominations, to other not-for-profits, and even for-profit organizations. We proudly pay into the tourism tax that is appropriate when we do not qualify for religious exemptions. And we are grateful for being a part of Haywood County. We're proud to be a part of Haywood County, and we're proud to be a part of the town of Waynesville. Waynesville helped birth us over 100 years ago and helped bail us out on a couple of occasions. We've been great partners through the years. We have attempted over these 100 years to provide municipal services to the residents and to the conference center at Lake Junaluska, but after careful study 2 years ago came to the conclusion that it really is in our best interest to partner with the town of Waynesville by being annexed into the town of Waynesville and to have municipal services provided by the town of Waynesville and allow Lake Junaluska to do what it was birthed to do, which is to be a place of Christian hospitality where we can encourage people to experience the beauty of these mountains and to experience transformation and renewal. We're grateful for the support that you gave us 2 years ago and invite you to support this resolution, which, as Mayor Brown has clearly articulated, really gives the decision back to the people of Lake Junaluska and to the residents of Waynesville. So thank you for your consideration, and we do hope that you will support Senate Bill 141 by allowing us to have this vote.
I think we've all had the opportunity to review Senate Bill 141. It was forwarded to us, as well as the resolution. Does someone want to read it, or by reference are we fine?
I'll be happy to read it.
Okay.
Whereas on March 3rd, 2015, a local bill, Senate Bill 141, entitled Waynesville Annexation Referendum, was introduced by Senator Jim Davis, North Carolina Senate District 50, with the full support of Representative Joe Sam Queen, North Carolina House District 119. And whereas, in its 100 years of existence, the Lake Junaluska community has grown from a small seasonal summer camp to a 1,200 plus acre year-round community of over 850 residential and commercial properties in need of a full range of municipal services. And whereas the primary mission of Lake Junaluska Assembly, Inc. is to be a place of Christian hospitality where lives are transformed through renewal of soul, mind, and body, and not to be a direct provider of municipal services. And whereas, having spent over 3 years thoughtfully, transparently, and inclusively studying multiple options for the future governance and provision of municipal services for their community, the residents of Lake Junaluska Assembly presented petitions as of April 30th, 2014, signed by 67% of the registered voters of Lake Junaluska Assembly and 64% of all property owners, both resident and non-resident, within Lake Junaluska service area, requesting annexation by the town of Waynesville. And whereas the representative, advisory, and governing bodies of Lake Junaluska Assembly formally voted in 2013 to pursue annexation with the town of Waynesville, a decision which has been reaffirmed in 2014 and now again in 2015. And whereas the town of Waynesville independently undertook a series of engineering, feasibility, and service studies, and upon finding annexation of Lake Junaluska to be of potential benefit to citizens of both Junaluska and the town of Waynesville, the town Board of Aldermen voted to affirm a partnership with Junaluska in seeking extension of corporate limits by legislative act, a decision which was reaffirmed in 2014 and now again in 2015. And whereas the undersigned agencies can attest to the strong partnership that already exists between the Junaluska community and the town of Waynesville, we encourage passage of the aforementioned bill so that the residents of Junaluska may have a voice in determining the long-term stability and provision of high-quality municipal services for that community so that it may thrive well into the future. And whereas the long-term stability of Junaluska will strengthen the entirety of Haywood County and thus the neighboring municipalities whose collective efforts make for a prosperous region, whereas extension of corporate limits by legislative act is the only method of annexation available in this particular circumstance due to the unique development history of the Assembly and lack of sufficient contiguous border between the town's corporate boundary and area to be annexed, and whereas Senate Bill 151 sets the standard for self-determination even higher than that required for municipal-initiated annexations allowed by statute, by requiring a referendum of qualified voters in both the area to be annexed and within the corporate limits of the town of Waynesville, and whereas all studies, documents, and information related to the proposed annexation are public record, and officials of Lake Junaluska Assembly and the town of Waynesville have committed to conducting public informational sessions as is customary in annexation proceedings. And whereas the referendum will be conducted and certified by the Haywood County Board of Elections in accordance with General Statute 163-288.2 during the upcoming municipal election on November 3rd, 2015, and whereas if a majority of the votes cast in both the town of Waynesville and in the area known as Lake Junaluska Assembly are in favor of extending the corporate limits of the town of Waynesville, the annexation would become effective June 30th, 2016. Now therefore be it resolved that the undersigned governing boards, councils, and agencies of Haywood County affirm our support for Senate Bill 141, giving residents in the Junaluska and Waynesville communities the power of self-determination over the annexation of Lake Junaluska Assembly by the town of Waynesville, and request that all members of the North Carolina General Assembly give a favorable consideration and expeditious passage of Senate Bill 141 without further amendment.
Thank you. Any questions, comments of?
I'd like to point out to the board that all the municipalities have voted unanimously in favor of this, and the Chamber of Commerce has also. I will appear in front of the EDC on Thursday, and so we're seeking the endorsement of all the governing bodies and the folks in the community to go forward with this bill. I have here with me today several stalwart members of ad hoc committee, Clifton Metcalf, whom I think you all know. Who else do I have back here? Bill King, there he is. Ed LaFontaine is here, and they have worked with us a long time on this, so we would gratefully ask that you endorse this concept and vote for this proposition.
Okay, if there's no further comments then, would entertain a motion that the consent agenda as presented, including support for the resolution for approval of Senate Bill 141, be approved.
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. Let's take about a 1-minute recess. I know there's several folks who came from matters that they've already discussed, and they may wish to leave for other appointments. If so, we'll have about a 1-minute recess. Okay, we have reconvened, and we will begin with old business. The first item is requesting approval of the recommended architect for conceptual and schematic design for the animal shelter. We have Dale Burris with us, who was on the selection committee review. So, Dale?
Good evening.
Evening.
Actually, this was made up with the Haywood County Administration, County Manager Mr. Ira Dove, Ms. Julie Davis, Finance Director, myself, Ms. Jean Hazard, Animal Services Director, and some delegates or members of the Animal Services Committee or Advisory Committee, Dr. Hammett, Mr. Doyle Teague, and Ms. Connie Hewitt. We received three responses to the RFQ. Two of those only actually applied to the actual RFQ that they sent the qualifications for the project. And of course, and I say this the way they were sent in, it's Paget Freeman Architecture and Mountain Design. Both of them have done work for Haywood County, Mountain Design being a local company. We went through several processes to get, and multiple discussions. I can say that several people on, several of the members of the committee actually spent a lot of valuable time reviewing not as much the architect, but actually the consultants for that design Animal Services, because it is basically similar to what you might think of as a operating room in a hospital, because not every engineer, not every architect can actually design such a facility, as we found out by looking at other facilities. So that being the case, they did an extreme amount of homework. We met with the people, we contacted them, I want to say Skype because that's the one I can remember, but there was some other type of way we chatted with them. Sorry, I'm not good with this. So we went through that process. The recommendation was to actually enter in negotiation, request the commissioners to enter in negotiation with Mountain Design for the project and include Animal Arts, which would be the consultant for the design under Mountain Design Architecture, and RN&M Engineers, which is formerly Reese Nolan McElrath Engineers. Their listing is civil design concepts for site development, and one of their elected engineers was RN&M as their mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Okay. Now, I understand your committee was unanimous in its
yes, sir.
Its recommendation.
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments to Dale? Okay. If not, then would entertain a motion that staff be authorized to enter into negotiations with the architectural design firm of Mountain Design for the Haywood County Animal Shelter.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Very good. Thank you, Dale. Okay, next is the discussion of the Waterville Resident Survey. You may remember some weeks ago, in connection with the volunteer fire department issue, there was a public hearing at which there were several residents of the town of Waterville who expressed some concerns about the fire selection of the fire protection, as well as other matters. It was decided by this board to forward a survey to those residents to get more in-depth input as to their concerns. That was done, and they have been received back at the county, and David Teague has summarized some of that information. So, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. The county sent out 59 surveys, and we received 20 responses. We basically had 3 questions in the survey. The first was, are you interested in a substation for fire protection within 6 miles of your community? 11 people answered no to that question. 9 answered yes. The next question asked them which station did they prefer, whether it was one North Carolina or Grassy Fork fire station, or no to a fire district. To that question, 11 answered no, 5 answered Grassy Fork, and 3 answered a North Carolina fire station. Our third question in the survey addressed what other services might be important to the community so that they could be served better, and we received several responses to that. 5 respondents said that garbage assistance or a dumpster would be their top priority. 2 responses or respondents listed ambulance assistance or emergency services as a priority. Equally, 2 people said that law enforcement patrol would be a top priority. And the final response we received was that was related to road maintenance. 2 people said that DOT maintaining the roads or some other means of road maintenance would be a top priority. We also received several additional comments that are listed on the back of your attachment about that. I could summarize some of those in.
Bottom line is there's not a real consensus except that no to a fire district being created and no fire protection provided was the only real consensus. Comments?
Well, we had about 30 at our meeting, right? At least 30?
Close to that number, I would say.
So not all of them. Well, the 30 responded then.
We had several of those people that were here had conversations with me since this is going on. The consensus really has been no.
That's why we took it that night, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. On the other hand, basic fire protection is something that most people expect, and it's not generally provided based on a referendum.
Well, on that question where it said, to be established in 6 miles, there's nothing within 6 miles now.
That's for that's to get their fire rating insurance.
Right, if you could do that, but there's no, and that would only be if Grassy Fork had that substation at some point in time, then that would be marginal to be 6.
My understanding that the only way that would work for a rating on fire insurance would be if either somebody in North Carolina or in Grassy Fork established a substation within 6 miles of the majority of these residents. And they're so spread out down there, I don't know that that's even physically possible with Mount Sterling and so forth. You move close enough to be within 6 miles of one, you've probably moved further away from another. So,
if we are we required or should we establish a fire district? I mean, if you're required to it, most of them wanted to keep the money in the county. So that's going to go to Fines Creek.
Well, you don't have the revenue down there to pay for one. That's another problem.
And then if in fact Grassy Fork was to establish the substation in the future, then it could be readdressed.
Are you prepared to make any recommendations, Mr. Dove? Or do you need a little bit of time to get with the fire marshal and
We are reporting back the survey and awaiting your instructions. I'm not prepared tonight to make a recommendation on the substation.
If the board has no objections, let's task the county manager with discussing this with the fire marshal and others as appropriate and make some recommendations to us as to what would work and what wouldn't. And is that all right, proceeding that way?
It sounds like to me the majority of them don't want it anyway, so but yeah. I'm fine with getting some more information.
Yeah. But some of these other things they talked about that are easier to do, trash collection and so forth, we need a recommendation on those as well.
Well, I actually am a little more prepared to talk on the trash than the fire, but I'll be happy to bring that, yes. Because I have done some research into that with CW. I can talk trash. I have talked with CWS. They are willing to put a dumpster out there and make it bear-proof. That was one of the concerns. The thing is, we'll have to go back and find someone who, and there may be some possibilities we can look at, who would be willing to have the dumpster on their property and monitor it. And so finding a resident who would be willing to do that is going to become the next question, and that's something we can look into.
So one of the places that might have, or was mentioned, and you'd have to know the area down there, but not the interstate, but if you go on in there, there's a bridge, the new bridge I think is built, and there's a part of the DOT right-of-way over where the old bridge crossed or something that's not being used. Somebody mentioned that. I don't know whether that's an option.
We can look after a little bit of look into this, it's going to be better if we have someone who can monitor it and it's on some kind of property where it can be monitored as opposed to a right-of-way.
On up into the community also. So.
Yeah, a little more up in the community and a little more monitored, but I'll be happy to look at all options like the DOT right-of-way and everything else.
Why don't you go ahead and do that and then come back to us when you have when you're ready. When you have some recommendations. Okay, we'll move to new business. We have David Francis with us again, the tax administrator, requesting approval of an updated Haywood County bid procedure for potential buyers of county-owned property. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Several years ago, we adopted a policy to dispose of the foreclosed properties that we had acquired that did not sell at the original sale. Since that time, we have, thought there could be a better procedure and a better way to do things. During the work session, two work sessions ago, we found a better way, and we have tweaked that. We went through, looked at what other counties and municipalities were doing at the time, and this policy that you have before you is what that we think is very reflective and does make the substance has not changed that much, but the style of this has changed. There's 3 points of emphasis that has changed. There is a suggested bid amount. So what you will see on the website will have a bid that covers our cost. That what the dollars and expenses that we had in at the time of the foreclosure, that cost for the attorney, the advertisements, any of those costs, there's the suggested bid will be there for that amount. And part of when you have a negotiated offer as part of this process, there's an upset bid period after that is advertised in the local newspaper. That cost now will be borne by whoever is bidding on the property. The previous policy had that the county was paying for that cost. So when whoever the bidder is will be responsible for that cost. If there was one bid, two bid, three bid, whoever the final bidder is will be responsible for the cost of that advertisement. And part of the process is after a bid is submitted, the county manager or their designee will review that to make sure that the bid meets the requirements, that it has the bid in there for the suggested amount. And if it is not the suggested bid amount, the bidder has to put in there why they are not bidding up to the suggested bid amount. Those are the three highlighted aspects to the policy. More or less, everything else has to stay the same due to the statute that we've been using, and there's only, the four ways to dispose of county-owned property and we're using the negotiated offer with upset bid procedures.
We did discuss this at our work session. I appreciate you all getting on it. That's good. Chip, you've reviewed this?
I have, and as a matter of fact, David was nice enough to make a few changes, minor changes, but I think it's in good shape now, yes.
Okay.
I got a question, and like on foreclosure properties, okay? When you go out and you advertise it, and the particular foreclosure, the person who is being foreclosed on comes in and pays the tax before the sale.
Okay.
Is he responsible for the
cost?
The
Yes.
advertising cost?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Everything that is incurred due to that, whether we do it in-rim or mortgage style. In-rim has a $250 associated charge with that. If the person does not answer the certified mail, then it is advertised, and that cost goes on there, and any subsequent cost that due to the filing fees or anything like that, all those costs associated with them. So if they let it go that far to where it's almost going to sell, everything has to be paid.
Okay.
Yeah, to bring it totally out of foreclosure, you have to pay all the costs to bring it out of foreclosure. Right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, before you make your motion, if you'll make this effective tomorrow, March 17th, 2015, please.
Okay. And I would entertain a motion that the county bid procedures amended policy as presented be approved effective the 17th of March 2015.
Yes, sir.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and patience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is approval to implement changes in the county funding plan due to reductions of the home and community care block grant monies. Mr. Dove.
Yes, just requesting approval to implement those changes. The new rates are spelled out on the attachment. It was due to a reduction, a little more than 1% reduction in the budget on this one. That would reduce your county match.
So you just spread that across?
That's spread across these programs as outlined on the form.
And if there's no questions, then would entertain a motion to approve the changes to the county funding plan due to reductions in the home and community care block grant monies. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next we have Steve Brand and Rhonda Chandeville with us from the Arc of Haywood County. Welcome. It wouldn't do any good.
Commissioners, the chairman, and prestigious people of the audience, and this beautiful place that we live in. You are truly honored this evening to be able to be in the midst of two Browns in one evening, one who happens to be the brother of the other, but as it is quite obvious, you have waited for the best for last. We are really honored to be here tonight. I am now serving as the executive director of the Arc of Haywood County. We represent over 30 individuals in this community who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and it has come to our attention. We're here tonight to ask you to approve a proclamation which establishes March as Developmental Disability Awareness Month. I'm proud to have this evening Rhonda Chandeville, who is the Vice President of the Arc of Haywood County, and she would like to make a few brief comments, and then we would like to possibly have this proclamation, which I'd be glad to read, to be approved by you at this time.
Excuse me. Chairman Swanger, Commissioners, thank you so much for making this official proclamation declaring this month Developmental Disability Awareness Month. More than anything, we want acceptance, but with acceptance, this is how it's brought about, is through awareness, and we just cannot thank you and this county enough for making this proclamation. Like Steve said, we serve over 30 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in our county through our 4 group homes and our apartment living program. But we also give back to this county. I want to speak specifically about how we give back economically. Lots of people receive services and move to this area because of the services. We have great services for individuals with developmental disabilities, services that counties twice and 3 times the size of Haywood County do not have. We are very blessed in Haywood County to have these services. We employ almost 40 individuals, and that's jobs in our county. We're getting ready to have our 26th annual 9-ball shootout, which is a pool tournament. It's a huge pool tournament that draws pool players from the nation. So we've had some internationally, but with this pool tournament, we not only have the pool players, but we have their families, the onlookers. They stay overnight. It's the weekend of the April 24th through the 27th, and it's at the Armory here in Waynesville. So those individuals stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants. So we not only take from this county, but we give lots back to this county. But thanks again for doing this.
Thank you.
Be okay to read this
yes,
this
Steve,
time?
Please.
Whereas individuals with developmental disabilities, their families, friends, neighbors, and coworkers encourage everyone to focus on the abilities of all people. And whereas the most effective way to increase the awareness is through everyone's active participation in community activities and the openness to learn and acknowledge each individual's contribution. And whereas opportunities for citizens with developmental disabilities to function as independently and productively as possible must be fostered in our community. And whereas we encourage all citizens to support opportunities for individuals with developmental disabilities in our community that include full access to education, housing, employment, and recreational activities. And now, therefore, the Haywood County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim March 2015 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month and recognize that our communities are stronger when everyone participates. Take time to get to know someone with a disability, recognize their ability at work, and see what he or she has to offer. We are fortunate to have the ARC of Haywood County, its strong board of directors, and 37 employees who help serve, protect, and integrate individuals they serve with developmental disabilities. This will be adopted on March 16, 2015.
Okay. The ARC of Haywood County does good work, and thank both of you for what you do for them. So, any questions or comments?
Mr. Rodney, thank you for looking after your son. Art is in it.
Yeah. Okay, then I would entertain a motion that the proclamation for Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, as read by Steve Brown, be approved.
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, next up we have Sharon Woodrow from the Haywood County Library requesting approval for the E-rate funding for purchase of a book scanner or a book scanner center for Haywood Public Library. Welcome, Sharon.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner and Commissioners. The Haywood County Public Library would like to request the following proposal for expenditures in the total amount of $11,516.64, supported by E-rate funding. E-rate is the commonly used name for the Schools and Library Program of the Universal Service Fund. The program, authorized by the Telecommunications Act of 1996, provides discounts to assist schools and libraries in the United States. We would like to purchase an overhead book scan center for $4,995 and put the rest of the funding into our part-time salaries.
Any questions of Sharon? Okay. If not, then would entertain a motion that the E-rate funding expenditure as presented be approved.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank
you, Sharon. And we have a corresponding budget amendment. Julie?
The budget amendment that you have right after Sharon's presentation is for $11,517. We round these for the budget for intergovernmental revenue, and it's spread exactly how she requested, with $4,995 for the data processing equipment, and then the other amount for the part-time salaries to include some Social Security.
Okay. All right. Would entertain a motion that that budget amendment be approved as presented.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That concludes our new business. At this point, we entertain a motion to enter into closed session for personnel, General Statute 143-318.11A6, and attorney-client privilege, General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. 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 Okay. We have returned from closed session. I recognize the County Manager, Ira Dove.
Yes. We had a chance to review or have the county attorney review a contract. And in that, we're looking for authorization for the county manager to accept the offer to purchase and contract for sale forwarded by Palaman Luna Aviles and Angelina Ayala Arriaga for the purchase of 50 Henson Drive, Waynesville, PIN number 8615-69-3975, for a price of $160,000 cash, with the seller paying $3,000 of the closing cost. The execution of the contract and the sale shall be subject to the upset bid process as described by NCGS 160A-269, and Haywood County will follow advertisement and upset bids procedure to dispose of county-owned property, this being a negotiated offer under the statute. Finally, this process, as the initial offer was forwarded prior to the enactment of the new county policy for sale just enacted, we're asking that this sale be exempted from the policy that will start tomorrow for the payment of advertising costs by the buyer as outlined in that policy that you just enacted.
Right. Okay. Any questions of Ira? Comments? Chip, you have anything?
That was well said. It's perfect.
Okay. All right. If there's no questions, then we'd entertain a motion authorizing the county manager to accept the offer as described, and of course to follow the advertisement and upset bid procedures articulated in North Carolina General Statute 160A-269.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
So this is the the mountain home that we brought kids into, right?
Yes.
Right.
That were displaced. Okay.
Okay. Is there any other business? If not, we entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.